just one last announcement. There is a raffle that we're doing. So there are tickets you can write your name on and drop them in the basket, and refreshments up here if you haven't gotten those yet. I'm Anna Towns with Forsyth Library. We are here tonight for the next in our how-to series, which has been a partnership between Hayes Public Library and Fort Hays State's Forsyth Library. So we're so excited to have so many folks here. Please do put your name on those tickets and get entered in the raffle. And I will go ahead and welcome our folks from Chestnut Street Floral to go ahead and get us started.
Thank you.
Well, this is a great turnout, so thank you everyone for coming. Just a little intimidating, but we'll get through it. I'm Casey, I'm the owner of Chestnut Street Floral, and this is Katie. She's worked with me for a long time and manages most of all aspects of the floral side. We have a lot going on at the store. If you have not made your way, some faces are very familiar to the shop, but we do a lot from gifts and retail and primarily a ton of wedding. And then she helps manage all aspects, but mostly takes care of the flowers. Right now there has been a big trend of people wanting to buy like loose stems of flowers at Dillon's and try to create something themselves. So we're hoping that this will help you guys learn a few tricks on how to create your own arrangement at home. We have some silk options to show you, and also fresh silk is far more forgiving. And as I was learning, it was more of my favorite because you can just bend it back and not break it off. On the fresh arrangements, sometimes they just get a little shorter if you have to keep recutting things. But there are tricks to make it easier and not be intimidating, and flowers are very pretty. It's pretty in itself. It's amazing the different designs. You can see other people even like when they come into the cooler. Some like more of the very whimsical garden look, and some like a more tight and compact. So I don't think there's ever really a wrong way to it, because flowers are just pretty by themselves. But to get started, I think we're going to go ahead and show you the fresh side of things first, and then we can always take questions in between and then move on to the silk ones.
Okay, so like she said, there's a big trend going on right now where people buy loose stem flowers either from Dillon's or from your local flower shop. You're more than welcome to come in and grab some from us if you'd like to and take home. We've had a couple of customers come in and do it. They have their own supplies at home. They just really like to do it, so that's always fun. Don't need to be intimidated by it. Flowers are always just, like she said, they're beautiful, so enjoy the process and don't be scared by it. So these are some of the... I'm sorry?
Could you speak louder? It's hard to hear.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So there's a lot, is this a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a lot of different techniques that you can do. A lot of times it starts with your vase. So the first thing I'm going to show you is a mason jar. A lot of people at home will be able to have access to a mason jar or a vase about this size. This is kind of a nice size to start off with, and you'll end up with an arrangement about this big or so, depending on the style that you want. So this is the one that we're raffling off today, so one of you guys will be able to take it home and enjoy it for the next week or two. So when you want to start, you're going to start with your vase, and you need to notice the size of the opening of the vase. So I overheard some people talking about that their flowers tend to fall out. So just real quickly, the size of your vase opening will determine how far out your flowers will go. So if your vase opening is really large, you can always grid it. So this is a larger size vase. It has a larger opening than this one. So if I wanted to make sure that my flowers stayed put, I can what's called grid it. So you can take floral tape that's clear and grid it. I've seen people do Scotch tape from DIYs online. I'm sure you guys have seen that or tried it yourself. So you can just easily just do almost like a hashtag. Most people know social media now. So hashtag on the top of your vase, and then do tape around the sides, so that way when you're poking it in, it doesn't come off. So that's a little hack for you. And then the other one would be to do fresh foam. So you could do fresh foam in this. Fresh foam holds water in it, and you could put it in here and cut, and then just tape that down.
It's like the silk foam, except it's green.
So when you have your vase, you're going to get some water, usually one that has flower food in it. Usually wherever you get your flowers from, you can get flower food from them if you're interested. You can also just use your water at home if you'd like. Won't last nearly as long, but it definitely will be okay. So you want to fill up your vase all the way to the top, because if you're like me, I'll forget to water my flowers and then the life vase shortens. So you want to always remember to water your flowers every few days or check the water level, because especially when it's hot outside, which is getting warmer outside, they're going to drink a lot more. So you'll notice that they'll get more and more water as they'll drink more and more water. So make sure you're replenishing that water to keep your flowers fresh and stay alive for longer. So once you have your vase full of water, I don't know if you guys can see this back there, you will, so you either need to start with your greens as a base to get your mechanics or a grid form for yourself, or you need to start with your grid, your hashtag on top, or if you have your foam, that's a nice mechanic for a grid to help keep all your things stable when you're entering or putting your flowers in the vase. On this arrangement, I did my flowers first and I added my greenery last. Like she said, everyone kind of does things differently. It really depends on your preference and the style of arrangement that you're going to make. So like I said, I did the greens last, so I'm creating a grid with my stems. So as long as you're crisscrossing your stems in your vase, you're going to create that natural mechanics of your grid inside your vase, so your flowers will hold up straight. So,
and you don't always have to know what design of arrangement you want to have to go into it. I prefer when people don't sometimes say, here's a picture and I want it just like it, because between the shape of the stem, which way things are curving, sometimes it's nice for the flowers to kind of tell you which way they're going to go, and that kind of create it that way.
So when you're working with roses, usually roses have thorns on them. The best way that I find is using wire snips that have a flat side to them, and I just go along the edge and I hold it flat against and I trim them off. You don't want to snip into the stem, because if you have an open area on the stem, then it can create bacteria and it'll shorten the life of your flowers. So usually I have a little bit taller design table, so hang on just a second here. You're going to measure your arrangement. I'm just going to go off of this one because it'll be easier for me to see. So you're going to measure, get rid of all your leaves that are going to be in the water. Again, you don't want any foliage below the water line, or it'll cause bacteria and shorten the base life of your flowers. If you're doing roses, there's always the outside petals that you can take off that are damaged if you want. Don't take off too many. Enjoy the natural flaws that are in life. So you can definitely do that, and then measure and stick in your vase. Again, I put it at an angle, so you're creating that crisscross in your vase. So the next thing I'll go with, this is a focal flower. So your bigger blooms are your focal flowers, your smaller blooms are your secondary flowers, and then you have your fillers and your greens. There's also lots of other fancy flowers in there too, but those are your main staples. So. Again, take off all your greens that are going to be below the water line. And I'm going to start crisscrossing your stems. I don't know if you can see that in the vase there. So you measure, where do you want it visually? Kind of like when you're doing any sort of cutting and measuring, you want to measure twice, cut once. Like she said, if you measure once and cut once, sometimes your arrangement gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So always keep that in mind. You can add length to your stem if you want to, but you still need to be able to, with wire. Sometimes you can do that with wire, but you still want to be able to have your stem at least all the way to the bottom of your vase, because again, it'll keep drinking water if you forget to water it. So measure and remove your foliage. You can remove your foliage beforehand if you want, and again, crisscross. So kind of working back and forth in the vase. And this is a more garden style arrangement, so it's kind of whimsical. So thought maybe it would be easier just to kind of know that you're just placing it in, measuring, cutting, placing. Again, crisscrossing your stems in your vase. Kind of like if you're doing a hand-tied bouquet, you're going to crisscross your stems in your hand. Got some spray roses here. Again, we're going to remove the foliage.
That's one way as she's doing it, is if you wonder if you go to another flower shop or Walmart or Dillon's and you squeeze the heads like she is, if they collapse in like air's in it, then they're already at their life. That's as big as they're gonna probably get. If you feel that firmness, it's gonna open and keep blooming. So that's a really good way of checking the flowers before you take them home.
And you can do that with not just roses, but carnations. You can do that at the base of the carnation as well. If it feels firmer, they're fresh, more fresh. So again, measure, cut, and place. So just very simple as you kind of go back and forth on that aspect. You can also think about color and texture when you're designing. A lot of times the little wraps that you pick up from the grocery store, they'll only have a select few flowers in there, or like one focal bloom. That's why I did 1 and 1. So that's kind of what you get in those wraps sometimes, which is totally fine. It'll give you a garden style, but you do want to kind of balance the arrangement with your heavy flower on one side and your other heavy flower on the other. So I tell a lot of people that come in and work part-time or want to learn flowers is that you kind of learn that balancing the arrangement, and also knowing that in nature some of the bigger blooms are towards the bottom and some of the smaller blooms are usually towards the top, so you can always get those dancier blooms and lighter blooms towards the top, so like you have some of these airier blooms towards the top and your bigger focal flowers down towards the bottom. Doesn't always apply, but that's just a kind of a general rule. Do you guys have any questions why we're doing this?
When you cut them, do you cut it straight or do you cut it at a slant?
You do cut it at a slant, and you want to get certain snips, because specialized flower snips. You can use scissors at home. A lot of people do it. It just crushes the stem, and when you crush the stem, then the flowers can't uptake water as well. So not a big deal. Just, I mean, if you're getting just a few flowers for the week, you'll be fine. But if you wanted to last longer, investing in some good floral snips would always be good. But you don't have to. Any other questions that you guys might have?
Is there any kind of rule about, the tallness of your vase and how tall the flowers should be?
Yes, typically it's 1 to 1.5 inches, or 1 and 1.5 inches, 1 and 1/2 times the base height. It doesn't always have to be that way, because there's a lot of different designs that are a little bit more whimsical, but just for designing at home, yeah, if you want to do that to kind of help make it look more balanced and professional, keep that in mind. So if you have a 4-inch vase, you want to make sure that it's at least 8 inches tall, so another 4 inches on top. So I'm just adding a few flowers in there. Any other questions that you guys have while we're adding? There was someone that we were talking to before, and make sure you turn your vase, that we were just discussing secrets of flowers. And there's a viral video that I have seen recently, and some of you might have seen it, I don't know. But it made me happy to have that conversation with the general public, that they did have that conversation, is what's the secret and how do you make flowers last so long? So in flower shops, we have a spray that we spray on our flowers to help seal in the moisture of it. But if you're at home, and even just flowers that you get from anywhere, flowers are not meant to last forever. Okay, if you want flowers that last forever, go with silk flowers. So it's a viral video that they did with Drew Barrymore, and it's a really sweet video, so if you find it online, I recommend you watching it, because it is true. Flowers are meant to keep us in the present. They're not supposed to be lasting forever. So enjoy them in the moment that you are there with them. and know that you can always go get more, send more to someone else at another time, and bring you joy again. So if that helps you at all, you're not doing anything wrong. They're not supposed to last forever. So measure and cut, and just keep doing that until you get your vase nice and full. So, and like I said, just keep going back and forth.
And sometimes this is probably one thing that recently, when you're gifted flowers, sometimes people will ask florists to send photos. You know, they send an inspiration photo, and a bigger trend, I would use that wording, is some of these beautiful big blooms. Ruffled, you see the stamina inside of it. It's big, it's beautiful, but in our world, that's a rose that's almost gone. So to help balance that for people that really like that look, and it is beautiful when some of them are like that. We always say if you really like that look, then go ahead and go with 90% of the flowers having some life, getting to open still, and let's just do a few of them in there. And so as a flower shop, you know, sometimes people will call and they'll say, I'm concerned, we got this arrangement, there's one bloom, it only lasted 2 days. It also is because that was supposed to look like that. You know, there's just different things along the way on arrangements when they arrive to you that you can look at. To have an arrangement all of a sudden go bad the next day isn't right, especially if it's the whole arrangement. To have a bloom, one bloom out of an entire vase of flowers, that's not always uncommon to have something, but if you ever notice that, you can look at the longevity when it arrives. Wow, these are really open, these are really full. That's why on lilies you'll see, for us anyway, that sometimes a big beautiful open lily looks so pretty while designing, but we'll sure make sure there's 4 or 5 closed buds or near opening buds to counterbalance that one big bloom is probably not going to last very long. So let's make sure there's some other buds that are going to open and continue that beauty of that lily.
So as she was talking, I was putting some stems in the vase, and I just wanted to remind you guys, so if you can see in the vase, the stems are crisscrossing. As long as you keep going back and forth in your vase, going from one side to another, turn your vase, one side to another, turn your vase, and keep adding flowers that way. If you don't have your grid, you don't have your foam, that creates a grid inside your vase that holds your flowers up. So right now, in the bottom of this vase, there's a little focal point right here where they crisscross and meet in the vase. And I don't know if you guys can see that all the way in the back or not, but that's kind of where they're cinched in. So when I went to go ahead and put this in the middle, it kind of flopped down because he's not being held by the grid. So I want to go through the middle of my grid, and I just kind of twist and turn until I find a good spot where he catches and stays upright, instead of just falling to the side. So you just kind of keep adjusting until you find a right spot that he just stays right up.
And that's why it's even more important to take the thorns off your roses, because sometimes you put that flower in the wrong spot and everything looks great and you need to take it out because it's not right, and it catches on your stems that are crossing, and then the whole arrangement wants to come out with it.
Yeah.
Which has happened with lack of me taking the time. That ended up taking way more time than just removing the thorn.
Okay. We can just keep adding to this, but I think we will, if you guys don't have any other questions about fresh, we might move on to our silk.
I have a question.
Sure.
I've had lilies that, you know, are in an arrangement and they won't open. What can you do?
That is a good question. There's ones, are they usually the like smaller ones? Like you have some nice big sizes and it almost looks like it shoots off into a tinier bud?
Well,
The top.
larger ones,
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens, unfortunately, and I honestly haven't taken the time to research why that happens. I just chalk it up to it being a bad bloom. So if you're constantly getting those, then it might just be, well, you shouldn't be constantly getting them, but because we get in lilies every week, and out of those times we have maybe a couple that want it open. If that. So I'm not sure where you're getting the lilies from or if they're just from your garden, but they really should open up nicely for you. There have been some times that I've had some lilies that got frozen in shipment, and those will not open. They'll have a more like a translucent look to them instead of that solid white or green or whatever color of lily it is, if that helps you at all.
Sometimes I think when they come in so tight, which is great because you think, oh, it's going to last for a long time, but I think there's almost a lifespan to almost the stem itself, is what I've noticed as you start seeing like the structure getting weaker or wanting to bend over. And so I feel, not that there's truth to this, but in some situations that almost as if the stem itself dies out before it had time to get enough to that bloom to make that bloom open. Even on our spray roses, these ones, in the flower world, it's almost like you're never happy at times on our end. You know, you want them to come in tight so they last a long time, but then when you have a wedding we do a lot of weddings, so when you have a wedding that you're wanting to design it with and they come in tight as a rock, we're like, you know, and so once again, I always tease and say, God's like, well, are you happy? Because the last shipment, they were blown and you weren't happy, and now these are too tight. But they can do that same thing to where we will have tons, like we'll have one actual flower that's opening and all of these are tight green buds, and we'll use the one and snip it off for like a corsage or boot, and we'll set a vase out, and some of those buds will never open. No matter what we do, recutting the stems, we just eventually either design knowing there's buds in an arrangement just to kind of give that texture, but they don't do anything, so.
I'm not sure if you covered this, I had to step away for a minute, but how do you balance colors and foliage versus, like how do you choose what colors go with what?
I think it's a personal preference. There's a lot that goes into the color theory, so that's kind of a little bit of a loaded question, but you guys can just pick out what colors you want. Just think about your color palette. Complementary colors, you guys can always look that up, but complementary colors to kind of coordinate and balance things out on your arrangements. I like to always do a pop of color in there. It's a nice accent. Yellows and oranges or peaches, those always bring a little bit of vibrancy to your arrangement. But it depends on if you want a monochromatic or, you know, so it's just, there's a lot that goes into color theory. And there's
really no wrong
really,
or right answer. It's really up to you. I mean, I've worked with her long enough now that I do chuckle when someone calls in for a certain color scheme that I know will make her cringe just a little bit doing it. So I do have to chuckle a few times on that. And once again, you know, they love those colors together and they can't wait to have them together. And you know, the art world and the color wheel and doing it, it's like, no, we're not doing hot pink and orange together, you know, we're not doing those two. But
those two are pretty together, by the way. She's just
I just use it, yeah. Yes. So I think it's just preference, big time on that one.
I don't prefer yellows and purples together because when you mix them in paint, they turn brown. Like, to me, visually, I don't care for them together by themselves, but it doesn't mean that it's not a beautiful arrangement. So everyone has their preference of what they like when it comes to color.
There's a sweet man that comes in that, you know, never wants pink. He gets his white flowers all the time and that's his rule. He just doesn't like pink. And then you can have someone come in and that's as much pink as you can get in the arrangement is what they like. So
don't be afraid to play with color. Try it out on your own. Experiment with the colors. Look up color theories. If you don't know anything about color theory, just look up a picture online and see how can I recreate that in the same color palette. So if that helps at all. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Can you talk about filler a little bit?
Sure. So there's like filler flowers.
Yeah.
So there's tons of filler flowers. So like we said earlier, there's your main focal flowers, which would be like your rose, your bigger headed blooms, your sunflowers, your carnations, kind of a nice secondary to me because I don't use it as necessarily a focal flower. But irises, any of those bigger blooms are going to be your focal flowers. And all flowers have a face, so you find their face and which direction that they're facing, and we put those face forward, like you want to present yourself face forward. For filler flowers, there's lots of different options for filler flowers. This one that I have in this arrangement is wax flower. It comes in several different colors. I love this pink color. We use the white. This is actually a pinky purple, but we use it a lot in corsages and boutonnieres. It's just a nice little flower. I don't like it, again, Goldilocks syndrome. I don't like it when it comes in the big heads of the wax flower because they do come in larger bloom as well, but we can't pick and we try to pick and choose, but we kind of get what we get sometimes. But filler flower would be wax flower. There's limonium. There's a lot of people love baby's breath. Let's see, carnations are a good filler flower. Monte Cassino is a good filler flower. There's
really cute feverfew daisies, little bitty, they're cute. If you like that wildflower look, ask for a bouquet with one of those. They're very cute, like little dime size white daisies with the yellow centers. They're cute.
Thistle is another one. I chose this particular filler because I do like greenery in my arrangements. There's some people that don't want greenery in their arrangements. There's some people that like that contemporary look where it's very flower heavy and no greens at all, or very minimal greens. And so I really like greenery. Again, that's just a preference. So I chose wax flower because it does have that greenery on it. So I can kind of double dip on the filler of this one because I'm not spending more money on an additional greenery to put in here for a visual interest to my arrangement. So I have variegated pit, and then I have the wax flower that has that greenery on it. Same with the Matsumoto aster, they have some greenery on them as well. So that's kind of why I chose this particular filler, but there's tons of fillers out there. It gives a lot of texture to your arrangement. If you don't want texture to your arrangement, filler flowers may not be what you want to pick out. So a lot of times those little wraps that you get from the stores, they sometimes don't have any filler flowers in them. If they do, sometimes they have baby's breath. So just whatever your personal preference is, but if you want more of a garden look, I do like to add filler flowers in there. But for a cleaner contemporary look, no filler flowers probably is what you're looking for. So,
and if you get, sorry,
answer your question a little bit. Yeah. Okay.
If you get loose stems and you want to make two arrangements and you make one taller and shorter, a lot of these bigger ones have the branches that you couldn't stick this in a big arrangement because all of this would get wet. So if you strip all of these off, it's amazing what you have left to make a smaller arrangement. Even with these, once again, you would use more of this big one that's hooked, so you'd end up breaking these two off, and then you'd have them left to use in your shorter arrangements.
And a lot of people, especially when we do weddings, when we are cutting stems, specifically filler flowers, because there's so many stems or brackets to the stem, I try to start at the bottom and work my way up because then it helps me know how long I have of that stem, because you want at least 2 inches of a stem in your vase inserted into your foam, at minimum of 2 inches, if not all the way to the bottom of your vase, so that way it keeps continuing to drink the water if you, again, forget, like I do, to water your flowers. I'm talking about the ones I take home, not the ones at the store.
Good save on that
one. So I always look at this is just probably more information than you want, but I always look at my stem and I see where can I create a longer stem at. So this right here, I start at the bottom. This has a nice long stem, and then there's some foliage right here. So then I take and I will cut right here. And I have one nice long piece. Then I have another long stem, so I'm not wasting product. So to create another long stem, I look to see where is another break in that stem. So right here, I'm going to have to probably take off one piece. I might be able to make that work depending on the style of arrangement I'm doing. If it was a short vase like this, I probably can make that work. If it was a tall vase like this, there's no way that will work, because it needs to be at least 2 inches into the vase, into the water, and I try to always go to the bottom if it's just a vase with water, and that will not go in the big bottom. So if I want to make another stem, there's a natural break in the stem right here where there's no brackets. So then I take and I cut it. Don't cut your finger. And I have another pretty little stem. So now I have a larger piece here. Again, I'll probably take this bracket off. There we go. And now I have a nice longer piece that can go in a taller vase. So I got 3 stems out of 1 stem. So, little hack to help save some money.
Yeah, and with prom season around the corner, you have people that want to make it, and bouquets are big. They're in right now, that these girls carry bouquets. All of these are great. You'd have little pieces left over that match the bouquet you just did to now create your simple little boutonniere for him.
And one last thing I want to touch on, unless you guys have some other questions on the flowers, on the fresh. So this is called the collar around the vase here. I try to not cover it completely. Sometimes I do. I get a little heavy-handed with the greenery. But you want to cover that a little bit. And so I put my greenery down at the bottom, down at the base, and kind of tuck that in so it falls over the lip of the arrangement to kind of just break that line so it's not so abrupt. So you have different levels of heights. So you have your greenery height and kind of on up visually, if that helps. Okay.
Is there any truth to changing the water out totally
Yeah.
and snipping the ends of that off, and it'll help it last a little longer?
Yes, so at the flower shop that we're at, I really try not to use foam as much as I can, just to be environmentally friendly, and because of things like that, you can actually, if I try not to tape my vases, I try not to use foam, even though I love silks, which is totally contradicting that statement, but I do love silks just because they last forever if you want to keep them around. But the vase, if you can take the water out of your vase and replenish it and cut the stems of your flowers, they will last a little bit longer for you, yes. But that's not always possible when you get a flower arrangement in foam or a flower arrangement that's gridded in. You can't take those flowers physically out without destroying the arrangement. So if you want to, you can just continuously add flower food water to it, or tap water to it at your house, and just make sure it's getting enough water in there. The ones that have foam, they will drink a little bit faster, I've noticed, than ones that are just in a vase of water. They seem to dry out a little bit faster. And with the foam, it is really hard to rehydrate it once it has dried out. So those flower arrangements may not last quite as long in general, because once they get to that point of drying out, there's kind of like a no return on the foam. So, but that helps. Yeah.
In an arrangement, if one flower dies, do you remove said flower from the arrangement, or do you keep it with the other still blooming flowers?
I take it out, just so bacteria doesn't contaminate the rest of them. Even when we get a shipment in, if we look in the cooler every other day to make sure the flowers look right, change water, and we will take out flowers that do not look right.
Yeah, because it will spread.
Like a virus. I mean, honestly, it just makes the other one sick. That's what makes us nervous. Once again, I know I talk about weddings a lot because that is my baby of it all. But when we get a box in and there's one rose, especially in white, that's diseased, it has some really yellowing mushiness to it. That's our biggest fear, is that the rest of them now got it. So we'll keep an eye on it and see if we think the rest are getting it before, and then hurry up and say we need more roses.
But yeah, you can always, depending on the arrangement that you get or you make yourself, you can either rearrange your flowers a little bit to kind of cover that hole and still enjoy them. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just enjoy the beauty of them. But yeah, you can take that out. You can go to your flower shop and ask for another flower to replace it, and then you have another bloom and just kind of keep it going. But at that point, I would definitely change out the water for sure, because after 2 weeks, that really needs to be for sure changed out. So,
And if you ever have a gridded vase and you know that you will like ruin the arrangement by pulling it out, what I have done at my house before I knew how to do flowers is I would put the vase in like that, pull it back to the side, sit it in the sink, and basically I would overflow the vase until the bad water was out enough that it looked really good without disturbing the arrangement. You just kind of keep overfilling it, and then you'll notice that the bad's just floating out of the top of it.
I sometimes put my flower arrangement in the fridge at nighttime, and I think it makes it last longer. Would you say that's true?
Yes, if you put an arrangement in a cooler environment, it will hold the flowers longer. You do have to be careful of certain fruits and vegetables that are in your refrigerator. They put off an ethane gas and can turn flowers brown. So it's just a preference. If you want to try it, you can. But yeah, we always say, especially like corsages and boots, we always like to keep them at our store until the day of, for like prom or homecoming or any other special event, because we can handle the care of them a lot easier than putting that on you guys to care for them, just because there are some of those little variables that possibly could happen, but doesn't always. But that's what I grew up knowing and doing, and so I just don't put them in there. But if it's for corsages and boots, that's definitely where we have to put them if they pick them up on Fridays. So we just tell them to care for them, and that way. You also have to be careful with how big your refrigerator is, the temperature as well. Then we've had one person that put them in a beer cooler type thing, and there wasn't enough air circulation in there because they are a living thing, and so it cut off the air supply for them, and it turned it brown. So you can freeze your flowers if you put them in too cold of an environment. So there's lots of little things like that which you don't need to be nervous about, but just to know that if it was working for you, keep doing what's working for you, and if you want to try it, you're always welcome to try. So
The theory behind it is it makes them dormant and more sleepy, therefore the bloom will take longer to open.
Yeah.
Is the theory behind it being colder.
Yeah. So, but any other questions?
How do you keep the stem from breaking? I know you have those nice little metal things you attach to, which really is nice when you put them in foam. But so often, if I'm trying to arrange it, it'll break the stem.
Are you talking in fresh or artificial?
Fresh.
I'm talking about the weak stems. We have to put those picks.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that you can do if you're putting them in a fresh foam arrangement. Sometimes that if they have a weak stem, there's a few things that I've done depending on the flower type it is. There's little water tubes that have a pick on the end of them, and those are really nice because you can insert those into the water tubes and put those into your arrangement, and that way it's still getting water without damaging the stem. So those are really nice, but they do run out of water faster because their water reservoir is smaller. You can always add a floral pick. These are wooden floral picks. I think you can get them maybe at Hobby Lobby, I'm not sure, but you can always ask your local florist if they have some if you want to. They have a copper wire on the end, and they're just a wood pick. You take your stem and you hold it against the wood stick, and you take your wire and I wrap it around the stem of the flower, and then I work my way down, and you have it like this. I always add floral tape to it. Floral tape is the green. You can get green, white, brown, I think. It has a little bit of a stickiness to it. Once you pull it, the secret is to pull it tight until you activate that stickiness. And then I wrap my stem, and you pull as you wrap down. Now this won't last very long in your arrangement because it doesn't have a water source, so just be aware that that won't last very long. If you don't want to floral tape it, it will definitely, as long as you're getting it into the water, it'll still uptake the water for you, so it still has that longer stem. and supported the stem. Does that answer your question a little bit with that? You can also do a wire. I have a 20 gauge wire that's a little bit thicker. You could do a little bit less of a gauge if you wanted to, but 20 gauge is about what I use typically. And just again, hold it against your stem, and I wrap it around and down. Kind of gives some stability to it. But the wood pick would probably be your best bet, and then just not floral tape it if you're wanting it to last a little bit longer for you.
Okay.
You're welcome. There are some stems that definitely need wire to even help keep the heads up, or if they have a softer stem and not even worrying about inserting them into the foam, but to help, like ranunculus are really floppy. You take and put your wire through, you can do it two ways. You can go through the base of the head, you can go up through the stem because the stem is actually hollow in ranunculus. And so that can be a little tricky because if you're not guiding it right, your wire can come out the side of your stem. But you can go up through the stem center because it is hollow, and that definitely will help keep it a little bit sturdier for you. So, is there a certain flower that you were trying to do that with?
I can't think of one right now, but I just had that difficult.
Okay. Well, hopefully you can try that trick one of these times and see if it helps.
Okay, thank
Some of those hollow stems I've noticed break. Like when it's the hollow ones, sunflowers are a little bit tricky for me. The ranunculus, ones that are just have that, because I think when you go to push it in, because it's hollow, it almost crushes it, and then the stem just gets mutilated before you even get it all the way.
And on those, I again don't always use those tools. I find some workarounds. So if you're at home and you don't have access to the supplies like the floral pick, the wooden floral picks, or wire, usually your foam doesn't go all the way to your edges of your vase. I usually find an area between my foam and my vase, and those delicate flowers like that, I sneak those in between. So it's still supported by the foam and the vase, so it stays upright, but it's not crushing the stem by having to force it down into the foam. So I do that a lot with sunflowers, actually. Tulips. Tulips are still, they can have some rigidness still to them, but they can still be a little difficult getting into the foam for me personally. But ranunculus, same thing. So that's a little trick maybe you could try at home if you don't want to purchase the other supplies.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you're not wanting to get the supplies like you have here, could you use pipe cleaners? Or probably not?
I just don't know what it would do to your water.
Ah,
Because it could rust, because it's a wire.
Yes,
It's like
that's
it's
true.
not a coated wire, so that would be.
Yeah, that is something to point out, that our wire, if you go to your local flower shop, the wires that we have are a coated wire to help with the rust and the water. So fun little fact. So, any other questions regarding fresh? I know there's a lot that goes into fresh, so we could go on and on and on about the different things about fresh, but is there any other questions that I can help answer on that end? Yes.
Not a question, but I have found with my garden flowers that I use rainwater.
Oh, yeah.
They seem to last a little bit longer rather than water with chlorine in it.
Yeah, I could see that.
The wildflowers, like the garden flowers too, even the sunflowers fall in that. We even had to do some tricks, not saying that every florist would agree with us, but for our shop, all of our flowers go in the cooler except sunflowers. They're way happier just not being cold. So we just leave them out, and there's just a few that just prefer it outside of the cooler. So.
Same with some greens. There's some greens that don't like being in the cooler too. So. Okay. We'll just touch briefly on the silk flowers if you guys are interested in the silk at all. Silk is kind of the same line principles of measuring and cutting, doing 1.5 times the height, getting your colors and textures and picking out your flowers that you like. It does have a different style foam that she mentioned earlier. Wet foam is more porous and it soaks up your water. Dry foam for silk will not soak up any water. The kids have played with it at the store and it's kind of fun to see, but it just kind of repels it. So it's just like a styrofoam type thing. So when you have your arrangement, so this is more of that type that has less texture in it, less greens, just more of those blooms. Kind of a nice tight little round ball that you can put like in the corner in your foyer or wherever you'd like to put it for spring. And then when you're done with spring and want to get out the next holiday, you can change it out or put another arrangement out. So that's the nice thing about silks. They will last forever. Like she said, they are very forgiving. So when in doubt, and if you are scared of fresh flowers, try silk and they will love you because you can bend them and they won't break. So on silk arrangements, you'll want to get your dry foam and you'll want to cut it. It does leave a mess, so just be aware of that. This actually is all kind of messy, but dry foam is really messy. And I won't cut it here just to kind of cut down on the mess, but kind of measure your foam to see if it'll fit inside the container. There's a couple of things that you can do with the dry foam. I don't particularly care for gluing mine into my containers. I know a lot of people glue them in so they don't fall out. You can make them very snug and tight in your arrangement or in your container. I tape mine in. It's just a personal preference because it's really hard to get the foam out once you get it in there. And if you want to change out your flowers for the season, you're kind of stuck sometimes. So that's why I don't necessarily glue them in all the time. And some of our customers love that because then they can change it out if they want to and still have the same base or turn it into fresh at some point. But if you want to, I did glue this one in so it wouldn't fall out. But this one I did not glue in. He's just tight in there. So lots of different styles that you can do. Find out what works best for you and your design. But yes, I did glue this one and just use hot glue. Just be careful with your hot glue gun, but you just glue in the bottom of it a little bit. So with that, again, I just picked out my flowers. The tools that you'll want are some really nice wire cutters. These are my favorite from the store. And if anybody runs off with them, I get really sad. So not all two wire cutters are made the same by any means. So you'll want to find your flowers that you like. Again, you want to measure and cut. With silk flowers, with silk flowers, they can be really hard to cut through because of the thick stems and the wires that are in there. So that's why I love my beloved wire cutters. So find you some really good wire cutters that will cut through the thick stems. These have different, again, you're going to treat it like fresh flowers. There's 3 different stems on here, so you can have 3 different, if you're doing a shorter arrangement, you can have 3 different stems to use inside your container. If you're using a taller vase, obviously you just use it as one whole stem. Because again, you want to keep that same mentality in mind of keeping your stems going all the way to the bottom of the container. And if it's in foam, you want to at least go in at least 2 inches into the foam. So once you cut your flower, I actually started with these guys. So I started with my green filler on this one. And again, I just measured where do I want that at height-wise, and then I cut. So you can see it's going all the way down to the bottom of the vase or container. If not, if I need it to be a little higher, it will be at least 2 inches into the vase or container. Sorry, I don't want to push it out of your phone. You do want it to be on a sturdy table when you're inserting it because that foam is harder to push your stems through. Again, I'm balancing it on both sides, visually, color-wise, and texture. Again, kind of working back and forth. To even it out, I'm going to put one right in the middle. That ratio of 3 odd numbers. Okay. And just going back and forth again. What I add on one side, I'm going to add on the other just to make it balanced. Those blooms are not the same size, so I'm going to balance this side out with another smaller bloom. So you'll have a medium and a small bloom. That equals the weight of a larger fuller bloom. So then now I have a medium and a small bud to equal the weight of a bigger one. Again, we're going to take the same principles that we used on the fresh, and we're going to cut the greenery off because that will go in our foam, and it's very difficult to put the stem into the foam when you have leaves in the way. A lot of the stems that I get are very realistic, and so sometimes we'll even have thorns on them, which whatever. But so go ahead and trim them off like you would with fresh. Again, that's why it's nice to have like a flat side so you're not digging into your stem. So again, measure and cut and insert. Now this one with the fresh, we had different levels that we went. This is more of a roundy moundy type thing. So you still want to have some depth and dimension in the arrangement by tucking, like my greens are down a little bit lower. These flowers are just a smidge higher. May not be that noticeable, but it does give more visual interest to your arrangement when you are designing, is to create that little bit of difference. If they're all the exact same, it can kind of be like you're glazing over a little bit. And so if you want to give it more interest, then definitely give it a little bit of that visual up and down to make your eye move throughout the arrangement. Okay, and then we'll just keep adding flowers back and forth. We're doing a 1, 2, 3 of the purple roses to kind of balance it out throughout the arrangement visually. You could do 2 if you wanted to, but I had enough room to add a 3rd to kind of balance it out visually, and it just looked like there was a hole there, and so I wanted to fill that in and make it nice and full.
Does anyone have any questions on the silk side of things or in general?
Have you found a way to dust silk flowers? Like if you put it somewhere and then you pull it out next season and it's like, oh my gosh, it's really dusty or it's really dirty. How do you clean it?
It is very difficult to clean them. There's lots of different ways you can do it. You can set it outside and let the Kansas wind blow it. You might blow it down the street, but yeah, I just kind of take mine outside. I have in my front area of my house inside. I have a vase with some greenery in it. It's loose. I don't have it in foam, so it's a lot easier for me to take outside, and I just shake it outside until it looks a little less dusty. But you know, in the Kansas wind, it'll still look dusty no matter what we do. So I just call it good. But yeah, you just kind of I just kind of dust mine off outside.
Do you know it's like a keyboard cleaner? It's like that is what we used when we were growing up, unless we were in trouble, and then we literally would have to dust every leaf as my chore list. But that always worked well, and there's ones that at my house that I use just that little can of air, so you can kind of get really deep inside it when you just can't wipe it off because it's too down. I find that quicker.
Very good.
Mine blows down the street. Hers stays in her house. one thing that you want to do is about your greenery. You don't throw these away. Reuse them. You can even save your stems and reuse them for making a bigger arrangement once you're done with a shorter arrangement. So don't throw these things away, keep them, reuse them. For this particular arrangement here, I did want to add a little bit of foliage to help break that visual line around the collar of the arrangement. So I took our lovely wood picks and I did a combination of the two different greeneries. This grayish foliage paired with, that was from the ranunculus, and then the green from the roses. And again, you just take your wire or your wood pick and take your wire and wrap it around. And then I add floral tape to secure it. Again, you want to pull to activate that floral tape. And then again, now you have a longer stem. So you went from something very, very short that you can't use really to something that you can use in a bigger arrangement. So that's really nice to not have to spend more money on greenery when you already have it on your stem. You're paying for it anyway, especially with silk. Sometimes it can be actually more expensive nowadays than fresh, depending on where you're getting it from and the quality that you're getting. So use it, use it. So again, measure, cut. Visually, I want to break that line to kind of help fill in that space there where the neck of the vase is. So, if you don't have access to these wood picks, you can always use wire. You might be able to use pipe cleaner, but it might get stuck in the foam, and it may not be sturdy enough, but it might be even harder just to stick into the foam. But if you go to your local flower shop, if you don't know where else to go, and come grab some wire, we'd be happy to give you some wire to play with at home with your flower arrangements. But same concept. Visually, I'm mixing the colors together to kind of give more visual interest. There's nothing wrong with just doing 2 pieces of greens, but to me, I think this looks more visually interesting, gives it some depth into the arrangement. So I take my wire, put one stem flat, and then I hold it in place and I wrap down until I create a new stem. You can cut that off, you can bend it up however you want to do. And then again, I take my floral tape just to secure it. And then measure and cut. And again, break that line. So, kind of easy to add that in there. And the wire is actually much easier to insert into the dry foam than those picks are, so you might have more ease with that. But those are some techniques and some tools. If you're wanting to reuse your stem, this floral tape is really great. You can use wire to attach them to make them longer. Let's say you want to put it into a taller vase. If you're going off the rule that it needs to go to the bottom, this will extend your flower to have that nice long stem in a taller vase. So let's say you're done with this arrangement for the season. You don't want to get a new vase. You want to get same thing. So next year you want to use it in a taller vase. Take your flower out, hold it against your other stem that you kept. I go up a little bit and down with my floral tape. So, and then now you have a new stem. And then again, you just cut, measure and cut, measure and cut, and then crisscross your stems, working back and forth in your vase and to get your heights. So
if you have a clear vase with silk flowers, you would just do the crisscross rather than, obviously, you wouldn't want to put like a foam in there.
Yeah. Yeah. So growing up, there was a lot of different things you can do in the bottom of if you have a glass vase and you want to fill it with silk flowers, a lot of people will do like rocks or marbles or whatever in the bottom of it. I've even done some fabric in there because there was no way in a specific arrangement that I was trying to do for a client that I could get I needed foam because the stems that they provided with me were too short, and even if I added them, they were going to be really not nice looking in the arrangement that we were trying to achieve. So I actually did some fabric in the bottom of it to cover up my foam in the vase that was clear. So you can do that too. You can grid your vase. That'll help as well on the top of your vase. And then just insert them into the vase however height you need and want. So, but if you use the green floral tape, it hides it a little bit nicer. But yeah. So, any other questions regarding the silk? I know that was a kind of a fast rundown, but kind of the same principle as the fresh. A little bit different techniques. So.
Well, thank you guys for coming. It's awesome to have this big of a turnout. We've been down over there. If people were familiar with Dwayne Spady, it was his business that I actually purchased from his family. Gosh, it'll be 9 years this year that I've had it. So it's been fun to get to learn, and I got flowers from him. So if you haven't come by, check it out. It's a little, you might miss it if you drive by too fast, but if you come in, we have fun, friendly atmosphere. We make the best of every day we can.
Come in, shop our silk flowers, come grab loose stems of flowers to play at home with and arrange yourself, try it at home. If you need any supplies or tips or tricks on something, always call or stop in. So don't be afraid, we're pretty friendly. Come on down, just chit chat and say hello. Yeah. So, okay. If you guys don't have any other questions, I think that's probably it.
We've got a drawing to do. Yeah.
And this is been video recorded, so if you need to revisit it, we'll have it posted in probably a couple weeks. All right, you guys want to do the honors? And the person, you have to be here to get it.